It's a brand new season with brand new hope, excitement, and of course, there'll be drama because there always is. Last year, we had COVID cases, a 7 times world champion, and a human fireball. What will this year bring? I'm Jenny Gow, and this is 5 Live Formula One. Yes, we are back and we couldn't be happier. We have a lot to get through in the next hour of this show, and let me introduce you to our panel. First off, we have our BBC lead commentator, Jack Nichols. Now, Jack, you've spent the winter a little in hibernation, but there's plenty to look forward to now. We are just days away from the start of the season.
There's so much to look forward to. There's so many changes. There's so many opportunities. There's world records on the line. It's going to be a really, really fascinating year, I think.
Jolyon Palmer, our expert summariser and former F1 driver, is also here. He's going to be here in just a moment, though. We are working on that. But in the meantime, let's not go to Jolyon Palmer. Let's go to our F1 technical analyst, Sam Collins. Sam, we don't want to get too technical, which is a little bit mean because you are a technical analyst, but which teams impressed you the most during your time with Jolyon at testing?
I'm going to geek out because it's not going to be the teams that everybody thinks. It's actually AlphaTauri for really pushing the regulations to the absolute limit at the front of the chassis and using the token system. There's like an upgrade token system. Teams are only allowed to change the cars in certain ways. They've pushed it to the absolute limit. And if there isn't a protest on that car, I'll be very surprised.
I love the fact that we're already getting into the whole protesting chat. Just 3 days of testing this year. That's kind of not the usual. We're used to 6 days of testing, so double the amount. We've got 23 races on the calendar. Jack, is this the least prepared the teams will be for a season in a long time?
Well, it's just been getting less and less as the years progress. Back in the sort of, I guess, mid to late 90s was the heyday of testing, and you could just pound round as long as you wanted over the winter once you had your car built and learn all about it. There were teams would enter Formula One having done a year of testing before even starting to race. So, yeah, I think they are really underprepared. I think it's good because with preparation comes a huge amount of data, information, and therefore predictability. And I think that's what we saw over the 3 days of testing in Bahrain. And even now, no one's 100% sure where anyone is.
That's why it's so exciting. I can't tell you. This is possibly the most excited I've been about a Formula One season since 2009, when Ross Brawn and Jenson Button came out with a stonker of a car in testing. And a few people who were there went, oh, hang on a minute. And sure enough, that car went on to be brilliant. Sam, am I crazy in thinking that?
Yeah.
Don't dash my hopes now, Sam. This is the beginning of the show.
It is. We're trying to read an awful lot of information into a very short test session. It's normally 2 weeks, and we're trying to glean all of these hopes and imaginations from 3 days, one of which was a sandstorm. What I will say is, going into a Formula One season, this is the most uncertain I've ever been. I have absolutely no idea on the detail of the pecking order because it's just so tight. And the midfield battle, I think, is going to be thrilling.
If you do want to get in touch with us, by the way, you certainly can do. We'd love to hear from you. The usual social media at BBC F1 or hashtag BBC F1. Jack, there's been a fair bit of change over the winter, it's fair to say. How do you prepare? Give us a bit of insight. As a commentator, when there are drivers swapping seats, there are teams changing names, there are cars totally different colours, that must be kind of weird to get your head around.
Yeah, I read what Andrew Benson has written. That's basically my sort of go-to plan for preparing. That's all I do. But no, a lot of it is about, car recognition, and that can change you. But honestly, that when the changes are big, it's a lot easier. So this year, Fernando Alonso joining Alpine, and Renault are now called Alpine, and they used to be yellow and now they're blue. That's really easy. That's genuinely really easy to get your head around for commentary. But the difficult part is when a driver like changes their helmet for one race or something like that. That's when it all kicks off and is difficult. I think Sergio Perez in a Red Bull is going to be a real challenge to get your head around, but it's things like that are you really have to sort of concentrate on, and you can only really get going into it when you have the first practice session on Friday, because preseason testing, everyone kind of goes out by themselves and you just watch one car on track by themselves fundamentally. But then when everyone's on track together, that's when you got to start looking with your eyes.
Delighted to say Jolyon Palmer has managed to come back to us. Jolyon, our expert summariser, former driver. You were at the Bahrain test. We've spoken already about how exciting we found it, but was it good to see the cars up close and personal and to really get an understanding of what lies ahead of us for the season?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, a year into lockdown and I'm still having tech issues, so no change there.
You got it sussed.
Yeah, grand, isn't it? But yeah, it was great to be in Bahrain and see Formula One cars again and new Formula One cars. I'm so excited for this season, really excited, because myself and Jack did a little interview for a publication over the winter. And we were talking about what we're excited for. And we were like, oh, well, the midfield will be good. Probably Lewis will win. And the rules aren't changing much. The pecking order will probably be similar. And then I got to testing and it looks really, really exciting. The field's so close, from the top to the bottom. Red Bull looked like a genuine threat. Really excited.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. At the end of last year, Hamilton and Mercedes were sort of dominating so much that the thought of another season of that with not huge rule changes to kind of spice things up made you a little bit not apprehensive, but I thought 2021 would be the prequel to 2022,
Fully fearful ahead of 2021. Let's not beat about the bush. It's been Mercedes dominance for such a long time. We've seen greatness. Mercedes have become such an all-conquering force. Lewis Hamilton has become the greatest driver statistically in Formula One history. Maybe he can go on and beat Schumacher's record this year, but he's done everything else. But we've not had the big fight. And when Mercedes stopped developing their car last year and Red Bull was still going and catching up, you just kind of sense that it's going to be another false dawn. And maybe it will be yet. But I'm more encouraged than I was anyway in November time, because they look like they've kicked on well, Red Bull, from Verstappen winning in Abu Dhabi.
Well, last year, Joe, I mean, we were talking about it in the paddock in Barcelona 1 year ago, almost to the day. We were looking at the Red Bull sliding around, Max Verstappen spinning everywhere, unable to get that car to work properly. A year on, the Red Bull looks absolutely glued to the racetrack, and it's Mercedes with a handling problem. And the team have told me they think it's an aerodynamic problem. I think they've got something a little bit trick at the rear of the car that isn't working properly. But that car, that Mercedes, while it can do one fast lap, I don't think they can keep that going for a race distance. And I think they're going to be killing the rear tyres. They're going to be sliding around. Lewis Hamilton looks like something more from the Tokyo Drift than a Mercedes Formula One team.
You fear writing them off, though. That's the thing. And we watched all of preseason testing, and everyone wants to know your predictions. And it's just so bold. Even though you've watched this Tokyo Drift Hamilton being really uncomfortable, having 2 spins in 1.5 days of driving, Mercedes not looking good. You just feel like anything other than saying Mercedes are going to be favourites is so bold. But from what we saw, that is the case. And Red Bull look planted. Sergio Perez is there and look good as well. And I'm sure it'll be close, but it looks like it'll be a good fight.
Well, this is the thing, right, to keep in context, is usually, as Jenny sort of alluded to at the start of the show, testing's a long old process, but we can't be judging the whole 23 race, fingers crossed, season based on 3 days in Bahrain. Yeah, okay, Red Bull look fine, but you're ruling out Mercedes for a whole championship campaign when they wrapped up last year's title having given up developing the car halfway through the season. You're mad.
Well, that's the thing. That's
So you
the
know
thing.
you're
You've
being
gotta
mad,
remember.
right?
Yeah, I know, but I only saw them drifting around looking very average. So I can't still say that I think they're going to win on the back of them not looking great in testing. You know, the rules have changed slightly, and I feel mad, but I think they're on the back foot to start the year at least.
I can't believe we're 14 minutes into this programme. That's including the news junction. So let's say we're actually 10 minutes into this programme, and you're already doing predictions. Where are you leaving me to go with this?
Okay, no, fair enough. Jenny, what should we talk about next?
Well, look, let's talk about some of the swaps that we've seen, some of the people movement, some of the things you're excited about, because there has been a lot of change. And even though the cars will look almost identical to the ones from last year, you've got the likes of Fernando Alonso getting back into Formula One after a 2-year break. So there's quite a lot of other things going on. So before we get carried away with writing off Mercedes' chances, before we go all in on Red Bull for the season, let's talk about the minutiae. Jack, are you excited for... We haven't got Andrew Benson on the programme, BBC's chief F1 writer, so are you excited about Fernando Alonso coming back to Alpine?
I think so. I was actually having a text message conference with Andrew Benson earlier on today about this, because I think this is the strongest depth of field that Formula One has ever seen. Now, there are some very close calls with this and some controversial thoughts. You think of 1991, where you had Senna, Prost, Mansell, Schumacher, Piquet all on the grid together. Those were some big hitters. 1982, you had Villeneuve and Arnoux and Lauda and some big hitters back then as well. And then maybe the mid-1960s were strong. But in a sort of a team by team, who's got a top driver? You've got Hamilton at Mercedes. You've got Verstappen, who's an absolute star at Red Bull. You've got Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, Fernando Alonso at Alpine, Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren, George Russell even at Williams, and I'm not even really counting a former world champion Kimi Raikkonen in Alfa Romeo to be something to be excited about.
Sebastian Vettel?
Oh, no, Sebastian Vettel, I am counting Sebastian Vettel, I just forgot him. And he's at Aston Martin Racing. So I think I think this is the strongest driver spread of a Formula One field ever.
Sam Collins is shaking his head.
I'm not, but you might disagree, Sam, but I'm not far away.
Now, Jack, I mean, I'm sitting in my house surrounded by books on the history of Formula One and motor racing, and I suggest I'll lend you some to read, because the 1950s, you mentioned the mid-1960s, you need to do some reading. It is a very strong field this year. The strongest ever? I think not, but it is.
What year was strong? What year? Tell me the strongest year then.
I would give you any year from the 1950s. They were all incredibly strong. Some amazing drivers into
Come
that.
on, what are you talking about? I'll give you Fangio, and I will give you Sterling Moss, and I will give you Tony Brooks and Ascari. But if you're starting to include Mike Hawthorne in this and Jean Berra in this, then you're clutching at straws. You're just living in a sort of rose-tinted land. All of those 7 drivers I've named are A or A+ Formula One drivers in the history of the sport. For me,
He's already missed Giuseppe Farina, but it is a very
Farina was
big
fine.
and good field, and I think actually that the drivers who are sort of have changed team, Vettel and Alonso, who's coming back to the sport. Alonso for me is the one to watch. He's coming into a resurgent racing team with a very old car. That's a 3-year-old car he's driving. It's the oldest on the grid. Big changes on there, a lot of engineering work on it. Alonso is reputed to be able to bring 0.5 of a second to every car that he drives. It doesn't sound like a lot, but in Formula One terms, that's worth millions and millions of pounds to get that performance. So Alonso in that blue Alpine, not Alpine, Alpine, is the one to watch. I think he's going to move that car and that team really far forwards, but that's more of a campaign for 2022. But he will score some surprise results, I think.
We have a green car as well this year in the shape of Aston Martin. Huge sort of investment in that team as well. It was Racing Point, pink car last year. Now it's the green of Aston Martin. And Jolyon, this is still a car that looks very similar to another car on the grid.
Mercedes, yeah. Not a bad car to look similar to, you'd say, and it worked very well for them last year. But, I mean, if Mercedes are maybe struggling a little bit early on, I would say the other team that struggled in testing were Aston Martin. Missed a lot of running, had a few niggles with the car. Sebastian Vettel, particularly, new to the team, not new to Formula One with his 4 world titles. But he needs to kick off really well with that team because his momentum was just tailing away, nosediving away very badly last year. He needs to be resurgent this year in the same way as Fernando Alonso, I'm sure, will be. And he's had a really tricky season. So I think Aston Martin, a team to watch, definitely. But they're probably on the back foot in that midfield fight from what I've seen so far.
But I think it's the future for Aston Martin that is quite cool, isn't it? Because since that team at Silverstone was formed in 1991 with Eddie Jordan, they've always been sort of a cash-strapped team. No matter who they've been sold to, they've been struggling for money and making it work and doing an excellent job at that. But Lawrence Stroll has sort of bought a share in Aston Martin. He's bought this team. And while there was a lot of derision, I suppose, for Lawrence Stroll just buying a team so his son can be a racing driver, and, understandably so, but at the same time, I've said before, if my dad wanted to buy me an F1 team, I'd be fine with that. But I think now, no, he would not. But,
just for the record,
yeah. But I think what Aston Martin are doing now and what Lawrence Stroll is doing now, you get the feeling is a lot bigger than just having his son have a race. This is a sort of proper infrastructure program. So yeah, maybe if they don't have a good year this year, fair enough, we'll see what happens. But this is more of a long-term project now, isn't it? Rather than the sort of year-by-year survival that has always plagued that team.
Yeah, and that's exciting for Aston Martin. But you can say the same for McLaren with Mercedes engines. You can say the same for Alpine, as Sam was mentioning, with Fernando Alonso and a drive to go forward. So it's great for the team, but the whole pack is getting more and more competitive. I think the whole future is looking better from a competition point of view.
Yeah, there's an issue there, though, because since it was Jordan, Force India, Midland Spiker, call it whatever you want, that team Racing Point that is now Aston Martin has always survived on a next to nothing budget. Andrew Green, the technical director there, he knows how to make something brilliant out of almost nothing, sort of gathering together and cobbling together something that works fantastically on a racetrack.
Like it's scrapping
challenge.
challenge.
Then you throw money at that problem. Is it going to be a Leicester City scenario where they can come out the blocks and do really well one year but then struggle beyond that? Or is it going to be like a Man City where they can actually become this super team? You've completely changed the dynamic of that setup. And one of the statements of intent of that team is they're still got this small team mentality from the engineering point of view. The Aston Martin is the only properly new car on the 2021 grid. Yes, it looks like an old Mercedes that's painted green, but they're the only team that's bought a completely new chassis. That monocoque, the bit in the middle where the driver sits, that's new. They've really essentially abused the regulations to their favour to get loads and loads of updates from last year's Mercedes, bolted them onto the car, and that's allowed them to bring a completely new car to the grid this year. So that's the car that's got the most scope for development this year before the big rule change at the end of the season.
I have to say that one I'm excited about almost the most, and I've had quite a lot of criticism for this, is my stance on the McLaren. So they've brought in Daniel Ricciardo as one of their drivers alongside Lando Norris. They've also brought in the Mercedes power unit, the engine, and we all know how good that engine is. It's just won 7 world titles on the bounce. So, Jack, do you think I'm crazy to be excited about McLaren?
I don't think you're crazy to be excited about McLaren. I
Thanks
think
for
that
clarifying.
I know that was too easy. Sorry, that was lazy of me. But look, this goes back to what we've been saying in that I think it's just an incredibly tight midfield. I don't think I'm going to get excited about McLaren until they're joining Mercedes and Red Bull. I think that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the midfield teams.
What are you excited about?
What am I excited about?
Yeah, because I don't think you're excited by Red Bull. Aston Martin, you're in the future. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about Red Bull. I'm very excited for Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton in a championship fight. That, oh, goodness me, that gets me going, Jolien. So, I think that I think that's very exciting. And the midfield fight itself is exciting. Ricciardo, I've just 8 minutes ago, I said this is the strongest F1 field of all time, and now I'm getting told I'm not excited about things. I'm excited about how these things pan out, but I can't pick out one specific midfield team and be buzzing that they might be top of the midfield. I don't know. Sorry if that makes me weird.
I was listening to a BBC News broadcast it was a breakfast broadcast back in 2009, and the newscaster was trying to explain what a diffuser did to the audience and sort of the 9 or 6 o'clock morning news, and failing miserably. But I fear with McLaren, who've got a really innovative diffuser, that's the rear of the underfloor of the car, they've got a really innovative part, and it's going to be copied by every single team in the pit lane, and it could be the big differentiator in Formula One this year. But that's not the team. That's not what's got me excited. What's got me excited for 2021 are those red cars, the Ferraris. Their little penalty that might have gone away this year. I think the Ferraris are going to be back up the front and nibbling at the heels of Red Bull and Mercedes. It might sound crazy, but I really think they're going to be.
It does sound crazy. Let's talk about those top teams then. We don't want to go too early, but now seems the exact moment we should do it. So, Mercedes looked slower than we were expecting in testing. Red Bull looked better than we were expecting. Sam's thrown a curveball in saying Ferrari. So let's look at the top teams. Jack, start us off. Verstappen. Can we be excited with Verstappen? Could he challenge Hamilton? It's the big challenge we all want to see.
Look, and you have to say yes, and you have to hope yes, quite frankly, because as much as having Lewis Hamilton become, 8 world titles, greatest of all time would be phenomenal, you do want to see him fight for it. And last year was not exactly a world championship fight. There were years sort of in 2018 and 19 that were a bit more of a fight, at least until the midpoint of the season before Ferrari's challenge fell away. But you want to see drivers fighting for these titles. That's why no one has any issue when Schumacher beats Häkkinen for a title in 2000, but when Schumacher beats no one for a title in 2002 or 2004, you're not really that fussed. So I think Red Bull have a real shot this year of taking the championship fight to Mercedes. Max Verstappen in particular. I think this will be a Verstappen versus Hamilton slog of a season.
People have said Verstappen could be favourite to win the very first race. Jolien, do you subscribe to that? Would you back Verstappen?
Yeah, I'm subscribing. I just think that this is, what we said from testing. I think they're in a better place. I'm genuinely excited. I think this is the season that's a changing point. I think it's a coming of age of Max Verstappen. I don't think Ferrari are going to be in the mix. I think this is a Red Bull versus Mercedes showdown with all the other teams, the Ferraris, the McLarens, the Renaults. They'll be nipping at the heels and they'll be closer and they'll be fun. But it'll be Red Bull v Mercedes. It'll be Verstappen v Hamilton. And I think this year it'll be toe-to-toe in a proper way, like we've had Vettel and Hamilton in years gone by. And if anything, I think Verstappen will start as favourite for Bahrain, given the testing form. The development there is going to be interesting.
From the track together, Joe, I would think you must have been a different test to me. Ferrari looked good. They looked together. It looked composed. It was a team that, not like the team from last year, that was...
Carlos Sainz spun 3 times.
Yeah, but he's pushing. You've got to push. If you don't spin, you don't know how fast it is. I think that car is looking so much better. It's got power. It does work. But I think you're absolutely right. For the first race, I think the Red Bull is the car to beat because Mercedes do have this problem. But I think they'll solve it. There's a big old gap till the second race at Imola, and I think they'll get the car sorted by then, and then we're going to see the Mercedes steamroller come back. But we know it doesn't work in all conditions, and I think Red Bull have got a real opportunity to get a whole bunch of race wins, and that new Honda engine has got an awful lot of grunt and it's much smaller. I think this is the closest Red Bull will come ever to beating those Mercedes, but it's still not quite enough.
Two things. Number one, the steamroller of Mercedes. This is an interesting point because the rules are changing for 2022. How much resource are these teams going to be pumping into finding the last little iota of time in this 1 year where the rules are pretty stable? They've already explored the maximum of generally what they can do when they've got a whole new window of performance coming next year. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like the huge arms race of development that we've seen before. Plus, there's a budget cap for all the teams to deal with as well, which they've not had, which is going to limit what they can do even more. So I think even more than usual, what the teams start with is going to be closer to what the teams finish with this year. Secondly, Sergio Perez is driving for Red Bull. We've not even spoken about him, but that gives Red Bull a much bigger chance this year than they've had for the previous 2 years, because whilst Perez won't be on the same level of Verstappen, I'm sure, and he's not the same caliber of driver as Lewis Hamilton, I don't need to tell you that, he is looking more composed. He's looking better. He's a race winner. And I think he'll give that team a lot more armory in the strategy stakes to take the fight to Mercedes even further.
So there's been a lot of, words about Valtteri Bottas a couple of years ago. Toto Wolff called him the perfect wingman and everybody said, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to call you a wingman and that sort of thing. But do you see that is going to be the sort of main role for Bottas this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to like that. He's not going to believe it right now. And actually, to be honest with you, Jack, he was better than Hamilton in testing. So he was the one that looked like he could play a better tune with that Mercedes than Lewis in the 3 days of testing. But how many times have we seen it? He's not going to be able to live with Hamilton for the whole season. Hamilton will be, I'm sure, the Mercedes lead driver. And I think the Perez Verstappen situation will probably be similar. There'll be days where Perez can be maybe there and maybe challenge, but they're both going to be supporting the number one drivers.
I'm just going to quickly chuck this one at you. But age. Hamilton is getting older now, and Fernando Alonso's, coming back, and he's really old, and Kimi Raikkonen's really... Does age affect the Formula One driver? Obviously, you're way younger than Hamilton, so maybe it's impossible for you to know, but there has to come a point, doesn't there?
I'm sure there's a point. Have we hit it? I don't know.
Surely it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and what happens?
Well, maybe I hit that age at 27. really solid at 26. Hit 27. Oh no. Oh dear.
I feel you might have lost it at 24, but anyway, I think. No, come on, I joke. But in seriousness, with a footballer loses his pace and his sort of sharpness. What physically happens with an F1 driver? Yeah.
It's reactions, mental sharpness, and that's what Formula One's predominantly about. Well, that's where the skill lies. But we shall see. They're still going well, all of those guys you mentioned.
Right. Plenty more to come. Make sure you get in touch with us. It's hashtag BBC F1. It is just gone 9:30. So let's get the latest news on BBC Radio 5 Live with Aaron Paul. Welcome back to 5 Live Formula One with me, Jenny Gow. We are just days away from the start of the new Formula One season. A bumper 23 races are planned, starting in Bahrain this weekend. To preview all the action, we have Jack Nicholls, Jolyon Palmer, and F1 technical analyst Sam Collins. And there's plenty more to chat about. But first, F1 is seen by many as rich men driving round in circles and ruining the planet. So, what's the sport doing to dispel those myths, if indeed they are myths? We're joined by Yath Gagakumaran, who is the Director of Strategy and Business Development for Formula One. Yath, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, everybody is worried about their environmental footprint at the moment. It seems to be the buzzword since COVID. So just tell us, what are F1 doing?
Sure, yeah. I mean, for us, we have a very ambitious plan to be net zero carbon as a sport by 2030. And to do that, there are a number of different key initiatives that we need to execute to make sure that we're doing our part to reduce our footprint. One that we think will have a big impact, not necessarily for our sport, but hopefully for the wider automotive industry, is the introduction of advanced sustainable fuels into the sport. But there's also a big piece of work that needs to be done and is ongoing around our wider logistics and travel, and ensuring that we use renewable energy at our facilities as well. So all of that work is ongoing. We're really pleased to see the progress that we've made since we announced our plans to be net zero carbon back in November 2019.
Obviously, we race as one is a big, I suppose, catchphrase, for want of a better word, that Formula One are using both last year and this year. And it's not just about diversity, which I think a lot of people saw very vocally demonstrated in the 2020 season. But Yath, just tell us, what is We Race as One in 2021 and moving forward?
So We Race as One is essentially our corporate social responsibility umbrella brand, and it encompasses the three key pillars that we have within our wider ESG policy, which are sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and community. And within those pillars, we have a number of pretty ambitious targets around, as I've mentioned earlier, being net zero carbon by 2030, but also to have all of our races qualify as sustainable events by 2025, to have an F1 that reflects the diverse world in which we race, and to ensure that we leave a positive legacy in the locations that we go to. So it's an umbrella term that encompasses our wider corporate social responsibility ambitions.
Okay, so that is quite corporate. So let's break it down for people listening. If we look at sustainability, a lot of people see Formula One and think, oh, well, the future is problematic because we're all about electrification. It's all about cars powered by electricity. Now, F1 can't do that. They don't have a license for electric single-seater racing as a world championship event. So what is the future when it comes to sustainability for Formula One?
Yeah, so we think there are multiple routes to having a more sustainable automotive industry and as a result, Formula One. Yes, there's a lot of discussion around electric vehicles, but ultimately for us as the pinnacle of motorsport, we need to have the quickest cars on track that can go the distances that are required to fulfill a Grand Prix. And we have looked in depth at electric, and unfortunately it doesn't meet the requirements that we have as the pinnacle of motorsport. So we are looking at developing technology that is relevant for the automotive industry, relevant actually for all of us, listening in today who drive internal combustion engine cars, relevant for society at large in terms of environmental footprint, and can hit our performance ambitions to be the fastest motorsport on the planet. And that's where having a hybrid engine with sustainable fuels meets the different criteria that we have. So we're really excited about what we can do in this space.
Just tell me, why is electricity not the way forward for you guys? Why do you see that as not the future?
Ultimately, the power that you can get from battery electric vehicles just isn't at the level required to power, a Formula One car that averages, 140 miles an hour going through Monza and having to complete 300 kilometers in a short space of time. If we were to introduce electric vehicles into our cars, the cars would be so heavy that they just wouldn't be able to perform at the level that's required. And actually, ultimately, more interestingly, really, is over 90% of the over 1 billion vehicles on the planet have an internal combustion engine in them, and they're not going away anytime soon. So if we can showcase to the world that it's possible to have a much more environmentally friendly internal combustion engine powered by sustainable fuels, that can in future go into road cars, into the Mini Coopers that people drive day to day, then hopefully we can have a really positive impact on the wider decarbonisation of the automotive industry. And that's what we're really planning to do.
Obviously, other car brands are available. Talk to me about fuels, because it looks to me that's the route you're going. And a lot of people talk about biofuels. Now, where is F1 sitting when it comes to how you're actually going to fuel the cars, and when's it going to come in by?
Sure, yeah. So we want to have all of our cars fully powered by sustainable fuels by 2025. At the moment, it's actually a little known fact that just over 5% of the fuels in our cars today come from biofuels. But we want to go up to 100%, and we want them to be what's known as second generation biofuels. Now, to try and sort of explain that in sort of everyday terms, biofuels typically used in cars at the moment are often derived from food stock. So they can come from, say, sugarcane, and that means that you're competing against food supply. We don't think that's right. So we want to develop second generation biofuels, which are not derived from food stock, which means that we're not competing against food supply, which often impacts particularly people in developing countries. So we're developing second generation biofuels that can be derived from sources like algae or food waste, but also looking at synthetic fuels as well. And we think that will be better for the environment and have a better overall impact in terms of everyday life.
And I'm assuming that this is coming into play with the new engines, which are planned for 2025.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's really important if we're to maximize performance, but also interestingly to try and encourage new participants into the sport, that we can marry up the new engine with the advanced sustainable fuels. And what's been really pleasing for us is the interest that we've seen from big automotive companies who aren't currently in Formula One, who are now interested in potentially joining us because we are going down this route.
Yeah, we have heard rumours of potential new teams coming into Formula One because, as you say, they want to appeal to a more sustainable, more environmentally friendly future. So do you really think that by going into these sustainable fuels by 2025, we could see some of the big players in the car manufacturing industry coming on board with F1 again?
Well, that's the hope. I mean, I think the key thing is not just that we remain the quickest motorsport in the world, but that we're also sustainable. Another key fact is that the cost goes down to develop these engines, which I'm sure a lot of listeners will know. You know, the costs are exorbitant to develop these engines, which does limit interest in joining F1. So a real key criterion for us is that we can dramatically lower the cost of developing these engines and these fuels, which we hope combined will make us a very attractive proposition for prospective entrants.
We've obviously got two other tranches to talk about. We're going to have to do it relatively briefly because there's too much to cram into this show, but we've also got the logistics. Now, you guys have moved to remote production, which means a lot of what you're doing now, instead of sending hundreds of people across to each race, you're doing back here in the UK.
Yeah, that's right. It was a plan that we had set out in 2019 that we thought would take a few years to develop because it's very technical. But actually, this is an example of COVID acting as a catalyst for us to hasten our plans. And we introduced remote operations in 2 months, not 2 years. And that's led to a dramatic reduction in the amount of freight and the amount of people that we're sending to races. That's led to about a 5,500 ton saving in terms of our CO2 emissions within 1 year. So we're really pleased with what we've been able to do, but this is just the start. And there's a lot more that can be done around our logistics that we're working through now.
And plastics. Sebastian Vettel, 4 times world champion, is very keen to highlight the fact that all of us media, people visiting the paddock, drink a lot of water and we leave bottles around willy-nilly. That is a thing, hopefully, of the past soon.
Yeah, that's right. So we are, as part of our plan to have all races as sustainable events by 2025, we are looking to dramatically improve the recyclability that's going on at all of our tracks. Starting this year, all F1 staff have been mandated to not use single-use plastics. cutlery, utensils. The real positive for us is that the teams have signed up to this as well. So all 10 teams during the course of the year will be significantly reducing their single-use plastic consumption as well. Pirelli have signed up also. And it's an interesting example, if you look at Bahrain, of this idea of leaving a positive legacy behind. So Bahrain hasn't done any recycling in the past for our race, but they've now introduced recycling infrastructure for the first time ever because of our plans to ensure that we're recycling everything that we have. And they're doing it not just for the F1 race, but actually year round. And so it's a small example of how F1 can act as a force for positive change in the locations that we go to.
And finally, the lanyards that everybody gets, we call it the plinky plonk machine. So when you go into a Formula One paddock, you have to hover your lanyard over kind of a button and it lets you into the turnstile. Sometimes if your pass doesn't work, it won't let you in and you get the siren of shame going, very embarrassing and awkward. But that lanyard has changed as well for the better.
Yeah, that's right. So the lanyards are now made from recycled plastic bottles. The equivalent of about 140,000 plastic bottles are being used to make the lanyards for last year. So that's already happened. And again, for this year, when we're probably expecting to have more people go through to the paddock. So again, it's a small example of how we're trying to enact positive change to meet the ambitious targets we've got. But we think that, all of these marginal gain improvements can help us to meet the bigger picture targets that we've set.
Yeah, it's a really ambitious project. It'll be really exciting to see how it develops. And we know F1 drives technology. It drives development at a rate second to none. So the future is bright, even if it's not electric.
That's right, yeah. There are multiple different ways to make a positive impact on society and on the environment. We think with F1 as the most technologically advanced sport in the world, with some of the smartest brains on the planet, if we set our minds to a challenge, regardless of how tough it is, we know we can achieve it. So we are optimistic that we'll be able to hit these targets and in time.
You're listening to 5 Live Formula One. That was Yath Gangakumaran, the Director of Strategy and Business Development for Formula One. There's obviously a lot of plans going on about sustainability, but Jack, this is a business. And it sounds like there could be some quite interesting times ahead if F1 can get it right.
I think there's so many layers to this, and we don't have time to get into it at all, really. But let us remember that the move to these fairly unpopular hybrid engines at the start of 2014 was to attract a load of manufacturers that maybe maybe Renault stayed, maybe Honda stayed because of it. But was this a huge success? It's arguable. So looking forward, the next engine regulation is going to be a success. It's just such an unknown, and I think we're at such an unknown in terms of the future of mobility. Right, that's something that has never been a thing in almost the history of motor racing. In the very early days, in the late 1800s, the first races, some cars were powered by electricity, some were powered by steam, some were powered by internal combustion engines. But certainly in the whole lifetime of Formula One, the 1950s that Sam and I were arguing about earlier, all the way until really the early 2010s, there was never any comprehension of, well, what else is going to power us other than petrol and things blowing up to make the pistons go and then the car goes. It's never been a consideration. So obviously you have things like Formula E that are going down the electric route, Formula One choosing not to do that. I think that future of mobility is such an unknown. Even recently, VW and Audi saying they're not going to develop any more combustion engines. So even if this, they use biofuels in a combustion engine, Audi have stopped making combustion. So there's so much longer to go in this whole journey, I think.
We haven't got enough time for me to fully respond to all of that interview and what you just said, Jack, because this is one of my favourite topics. I love talking about the future of mobility, power units, charging EV cars, biofuels. I absolutely love it, and I could fill hours of this. What I am going to do is I'm going to jump to something else that wasn't discussed in that little bit of sustainability, but it does show Formula One's commitment to changing things and decarbonising in future. You've probably heard that all of the Formula One cars are made of carbon fibre. Well, that's going to change from now on. The rules have been changed for the start of this season to allow the Formula One cars to be made of plants. And I mean, literally, yeah, actually
like
plants.
a yucca plant racing around on a track. Sam, come on, Ferrari was crazy.
I'm not sure a yucca plant, but flax fibre, hemp fibre. Flax is used for making linen and things like that. Hemp is used for making rope and other substances. And those plants, the stalks and the waste product from the agricultural production can be used to make an alternative to carbon fibre that's fully recyclable. This is something that isn't just relevant to Formula One, it's relevant to production cars, trains, even the stuff at home, your laptop, your mobile phone might be made of. It's a really important thing for Formula One to be doing. And Formula One is actually now, it's brilliant to see, seizing its position and redefining the point of motor racing overall, which is to develop new technologies to make the world a better place. And I think that's brilliant to see.
Absolutely. Who knew? Things you learn from this show. Right, we need to talk about the midfield battle because there are some really exciting driver tussles that we can get stuck into and look forward to in a total pace change of this show. Jack Nicholls, tell me, what are you most excited about when it comes to that big boxing match of a Formula One race?
McLaren. Okay, I think
that was Jack. Come on.
Yeah, I think we have big years for Lando Norris and a little bit Esteban Ocon, but mainly Lando Norris. I think this is Norris's make it or break it. Yeah, quite honestly, this will be his third season in Formula One. He looked rapid in the junior formula. He's up against Daniel Ricciardo, who I would describe as a if not an A+ Formula One racing driver. This is Norris in your third season with the same team has got to be sort of performing to that level. I thought he'd compared fairly well against Carlos Sainz over the last couple of years. Maybe not quite as well last year as you might have expected from the first year, but I think this is a huge year for Sainz. So yeah, McLaren is the driver fight that I'm probably most excited about in that midfield.
Jolyon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go with it. To try and pick one thing to be excited by, though, in that midfield is impossible. I'm excited for Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren almost more than Lando. I think the McLaren-Mercedes partnership can be really good. They will definitely get on the podium this year. And I think the partnership of the two could be very, very strong in that midfield. I am excited for Fernando Alonso coming back. I know he's going to be 40 later on in the year. We've seen what he can do over so many seasons, but he's a great character. He is the fighter of the midfield for like a decade now, minus 2 years where he walked away. But he looked every bit his usual self, even though he's had a bike crash over the winter as well, cycling crash. He was straight back onto the pace, and I think he'll be good for Alpine. Sebastian Vettel at Aston Martin and that whole team, I think that's exciting as well.
Sam Collins.
I'm going to be different. I'm going to talk about Yuki Tsunoda, the new Japanese driver in the AlphaTauri. He's been in racing cars for less time than Pierre Gasly has been in Formula One. It's absolutely remarkable. He's shown some real pace, some real maturity. I think he'll struggle at the beginning of the season, but he's going to be a superstar by the end of the year. That's my prediction anyway.
Wowzers. I'm excited about Mick Schumacher. Known him for a good few years now, done lots of interviews with him. And while he's with Haas, which is not going to be a top performing team this year, in fact, I think it'll probably be the back marker of everybody, I do think he's an exciting one to watch as well. And I think a lot of people, Jack, are excited to see him and his name and MSC back up on the watchtower.
Oh, I'm really annoyed by the MSC three-letter abbreviation, but let's not get
get into that now. You've got 10 seconds. Why are you annoyed?
Your three-letter abbreviations is the first three letters of your surname. They only changed that for Michael Schumacher and Ralf Schumacher because they had the same surname, so it would have been the same three things, wouldn't it have been? No? Sam shaking his head. Why?
No, Jean-Éric Vergne and Max Verstappen, VES and VER, because they have the same three letters. So they do change it from time to time, and I think it's wonderful to see Formula One reflecting a little bit of history. The GOAT, along with Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher won the most world championships of anybody. It's great to see his name reflected up there on the winners column.
I think it's mad to do it, but anyway, that's fine. But my point is, I worry that Mick is going to have a nothing year, because if he beats Nikita Mazepin, okay, fine, great. If he gets beaten by Nikita Mazepin, that's not great. So
he's
the
there
best...
to have a nothing year, though, this year. That's fine, isn't it? Have a nothing year, build a year, next year,
Palmer,
fine.
Are you learning anything in a nothing year?
No one's in F1 to have a nothing year. It's a really bad situation that he's got himself into. He's in Formula 1. He's the Formula 2 champ. I'm excited to see what he can do, but the team look like they're going nowhere. His teammates no benchmark. He's in Formula 1, which is great, but he's in the worst circumstance in Formula 1, if you know what I mean.
Ouch. Okay, let's just wrap up then and think about our predictions, our closing thoughts, because we're going to have a championship. It's going to be phenomenal, we hope. Who are going to be the championship winners? Jack, we'll come to you first, then Jolie, and then Sam.
I am officially... I think I'm going to... Here we go. I'm saying Hamilton for the Drivers' title, 8 World Championships. Red Bull for the Constructors' Championship. Ooh.
You're saying that as if it's a drama. Surely most people are going to agree with that.
Is everyone going to agree with
maybe.
me? Okay,
Jolien?
No, I'm going for the exact opposite. I'm going Verstappen for the Drivers' title, Mercedes for the Constructors' title.
Sam.
So you're rating Bottas over Perez? Okay.
I think he's established wingman.
Fine. I feel like I haven't been on the same podcast as you for the last 2 years, but there we go.
Well, I don't think Bottas likes being called a wingman, but there you go. My prediction, very simple. I'm from Hertfordshire, so Lewis Hamilton, absolutely, for the World Championship, the most World Championships in all time. And Constructors' Championships, after the toughest season that they've faced in many years, will be Mercedes.
I thought you were going to go Ferrari then.
Hang on, aren't Red Bull are in Hertfordshire, aren't they?
No.
Oh, no.
Milton
You're
Keynes.
right, fine. No, you're right.
Okay, and I want your surprise winner, please. Please, could I have a surprise winner? Sam, we'll go in reverse order, so start with Sam Collins, a surprise winner for the season.
Got to be someone from Hertfordshire.
Carlos Sainz. Now, Callum Ilot's not driving, unfortunately, so it's got to be Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, you think?
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Okay, Jolien?
That would be a shock if it wasn't in the Ferrari.
That would be the surprise winner. I think Daniel Ricciardo is going to get a win. I think he's going to get McLaren, Mercedes back to the top at some point this year.
Jack?
I think I'm looking at. I'm Tsunoda. I'm going Yuki Tsunoda.
Jack?
And that's a surprise.
What is
that's
the bigger
brave.
surprise? We agree on something. This could be the first time in our entire career history of 10 years of broadcasting.
Let's not do any more broadcasting this year now. We've peaked.
Wrap it up? Okay, I'm going to go Hamilton, Red Bull, Tsunoda as my surprise win. Amazing. Let us know your thoughts. Hashtag BBC F1. We like to be bold. There's so much coverage to look forward. There's so much coverage to look forward to. The first race will take place in Bahrain. It's the Bahrain Grand Prix. It gets underway at 4:00 on Sunday, and coverage of our race weekend begins Friday 11:30 for first practice. Jack, are we going to do the usual free practice one? I think we're not, are we?
It's going to be shorter. So for all of you people who email in f1@bbc.co.uk and get angry at us for not talking about what's happening on track, you might get more on-track commentary this year. So you might like it. Tune in.
We'll definitely like it. Definitely tune in. And Jolien, just finally, just how excited can we be for the season?
10 out of 10. It's going to be great.
What did you say, 10 out of 10?
Yeah.
Wowzers. That is quite some claim, Jolien.
I'm so excited for it.
He's pumped.
It'll probably be a flop now, but I'm really genuinely looking forward to this. It's going to be great. And Bahrain's a good track to start it.
It certainly is. We had fireworks there last year. Let's hope we have them again this year, but safely. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. You're Better Than That is up next with Jolien and Jack.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.